evening, everybody. My name is Lauren, and I am with Creating Conversations Bookstore. We're an indie bookstore located in Redondo Beach. Today, we are very, very fortunate to have with us Annabelle Gurwitch and Lian Dolan with us tonight. Quick backstory on our guests. Lian is not only an author, but a producer and co-host with her sisters on the podcast Satellite Sisters, which you can find on Spotify or any other places you get your podcasts from. Is about to celebrate its 20th anniversary this Sunday, so congratulations on that. Her books, Elizabeth the First Wife and Helen of Pasadena, are Los Angeles Times bestsellers, and her latest book, Sweeney Sisters, is now available in paperback and hardback. Our star guest, Annabelle Gurwitch, is a New York Times bestselling author and actress. In 2017, she was featured in Time magazine. Her latest book, You're Leaving When? Adventures in Downward Mobility, is being adapted on HBO, so you have that to look forward to. And then she also has a podcast called Tiny Victories. Once again, you can find it anywhere you like to get your podcasts from. And of course, You're Leaving When is the reason we are here. So before we get to that, just some quick house rules and guidelines. If you have any questions for our authors, please put that in the chat, and please remain muted throughout the conversation. Once again, any questions, you can put those into chat and we will get to those as quickly as we can. And then in the chat, you will also see links to both Lian and Annabelle's books. And if you need any more information on their podcast and future projects. Actually, on the thing with the book, Annabelle's book is currently on back order due to popular demand. And so if you would like to purchase a copy of her book, you can call our store. The phone number will be in the chat as well. And then if you would like to just come by or live in the Redondo Beach area, you can come by on Saturday at 2 o'clock, where Annabelle will be doing personalizations and signing her book. Okay, and I think we will go ahead, enough of me, get right to the main event. And we will let Lian and Annabelle take it from here. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. It's great to be with you all. And it's great to be with Annabelle Gurwitch. Annabelle, welcome to the podcasting world. I mean, it's 2021. You got to have one on your resume. I love Tiny Victories. It's like 15 minutes of feel good. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I decided, look, the Satellite Sisters, you set the bar high, Lian, and
True.
then everybody got, after you guys are celebrating 20 years, you did it, finally my cat got a podcast, and I thought, okay, well, I launched this Tiny Victories during COVID because the idea is to celebrate small mercies, which is, I felt something that, with so many big things stripped away, it seemed to be the right timing for that.
So. Well, it's the perfect name. It's the perfect length, and I've enjoyed it. So I just wanted to welcome you to the podcasting sisterhood. We're having a mixer, you, me, Michelle Obama, we're having a mixer later on. So we'll contact you.
And sisterhood is something that, first of all, I've always said to you that you're living my dream with all of your sisters. And I write about sisterhood a lot, and it is one of the themes of this book. And I just think we should tell people, though, here that when we met, I felt that you were my soul sister. And it wasn't the very first impression, because when I first saw you, Lian, I thought, oh my God, this woman is so perfectly groomed, and you were wearing this fabulous outfit, and I was so intimidated. And then we were at a book event together on a panel, and I noticed that Lian had her pants hem on the inside of her pants was being held up with duct tape. And I thought, well, that's someone I want to know more. I felt like you were a soul sister. And so, was the beginning of, a long conversation that we're still continuing, and my admiration and respect for how you managed to make it all look so good. But I know somewhere there's duct tape.
There's duct tape. Good news is those pants are still not shortened properly. So yeah, it's been like 6-8 years now, still not properly shortened.
Well, you probably have a little bit longer till we're really back in the world to get it done. But I expect
Right.
the next time I see you, it will be done.
They're going to be hemmed. But, I was thinking a lot about that particular book event when I read You're Leaving When Adventures in Downward Mobility, because on that panel, it was you and me and Cindy Chupak from Sex and the City, right? So an Emmy Award winning producer from Sex and the City. And somehow we were all on the same panel, and we had been in the same orbits for years, but this is the first time we had met. Yes. And the organizers of the festival they just had a terrible idea for the panel. I don't know if you remember this. Like, I don't, we were supposed to like do each other's readings. It was just not a good idea. And so you and Cindy and me, we just sort of took over. We're like, here's what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to run it. And because we're all writers and producers, that's how we rule our role. And then do you remember the night of, we went to the venue, there were no lights in the venue. Do you remember? It was...
Yes. I feel like it was like a vision of the coming pandemic, really. When you think about it, it was sort of like everything fell away. You couldn't find us. We were secreted away in a strange place. But, in a way, that sort of camaraderie of, let's face it, 3 moms, 3 writers, 3 moms, 3 freelancers.
Right.
We, anyone in the arts, although I think this is something that, this downward mobility thing is, it's migrated past the arts. Let's face it. It's
right.
something everyone is relating to.
Right.
So,
right.
We're very scrappy people. I do think that one thing about, when you are a writer and been a performer and a podcaster, you have to become very scrappy. And I think that it's a great thing to be resourceful. It's also, something I'm writing to in this book is, oh my gosh, though, when you hit midlife and you're suddenly faced with, well, what is this life that I've created? And then things change, divorce, kids go off to school, you're caring for parents. It's a lot of identity shifting. And of course, that's the subject for this book. And you'd think you'd be more prepared for it by being a freelance artist.
Scrappy.
You're not,
Singing for your supper all the time, just taking work because you need it and just begging people to pay you after it. But it really does. This book hits a lot of midpoints of midlife, expectations versus reality, the cavalcade of life changes when your parents die or kids leave, you had relationship changes. Apparently, we all aspire to be the Golden Girls when we grow up, because that's a theme in the book. Also, you and I obviously share a real love of Diane Lane films, because you do an excellent breakdown of all her aspirational movies, which
it's funny. I call Diane Lane the khaki pant of actresses, because, and you can never underestimate khaki. I don't say that as not a compliment. Khaki goes everything. It can be dressed up, it can be dressed down, but there's something about Diane Lane, which is, and it's something I write about in the movie, in the book, is about the way that we as a generation internalized messaging that we got. It's not like I ever thought I was going to live in the book a year in Tuscany. I was, or Something's Gotta Give, or the Nancy Lyons films, or any of the Diane Lane, the movies where Diane Lane has been sent off to be our avatar of midlife woman, But I think these messages were internalized, which is why I titled that first chapter, I thought there'd be coasting. I mean, I'm a hard worker, and I assume the same of everyone else, but I think I thought there would be a little bit of kicking back, feet up moment. And I feel like more like a duck, gliding
into the water, the paddling.
Badly paddling. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you had a vision of, sexy, foxy at 50, Annabelle, and, suddenly single and empty nester. And then what happened? I mean, what did happen?
Well, life happened. And the thing is, Lian, I feel like one of the great things about when life happens to you as an author, it means you have a chance to, uh, reflect on it in a way that, I mean, everything that happens in my life, I think, is that a good story or is that not a story? Do you know? I mean, things that happen,
Right.
even when they're happening, I'm thinking, is that a story? When I realized that, like, I was just looking down at this table, that everyone's mother had a brooch, an insect brooch in the 1970s, and I inherited my mother's, and somehow my mother's brooch isn't a butterfly, it isn't a cicada, it's a housefly, an ordinary housefly. Somehow that's sort of like, oh yes, I'm gonna write about that one day. The expectation versus the reality. But the thing is life happened in my life, and I all in all, and I think when people read this book, they'll see that this is a book about what happens to everyone. I mean, all the things that have happened in my life are.
Oh, you're muted, Annabelle.
I
Somehow you
don't
got.
know why it said the host had muted me. I don't know what happened there, but these are life passages. My ex and I, my husband and I, decided to split right when our child was going off to college. We know that. This is a
Right.
thing that happens. My parents died very quickly. At the same time, I live in a house. My camera right now is sitting on a table that used to sit in my parents' living room.
Oh.
I mean, I live in a house surrounded by their things. I am in the gig economy like so many people, piecing together, as I said on Bill Maher's show, it's sometimes you feel like it's death by 1,000 invoices. But, you know, this book is about
Yeah.
resilience, but even beyond resilience, I like to make the distinction because sometimes I feel like women are put in the resilience prison.
Yes. Yeah. You like toxic positivity and
Right.
resilience. Like, oh,
You
you're a
go, girl.
fighter.
You
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
this book is for people who've reinvented already 7
Yeah.
times. And then, it's about adapting to these new normals and finding, I have to say, all of these things that happened have were reasons for me to like look at my identity. And I hate this phrase radical anything, because I know someone in my neighborhood right now is teaching a class on radical swiffering. But radical acceptance. Can I find joy in my life? Can I find meaning and purpose? And I have. And this is what I'm writing about in the book. I thought the worst thing that was going to happen is when I decided to become a landlady, and I
Right.
was going to rent out rooms to help make my mortgage. And I thought, we
But
have.
that is honestly, that sounds like Depression era strategy.
Totally. But
Really,
the
yeah.
minute I started looking into it, I realized, and I did a little research, that the majority of people renting out rooms in their home, women, midlife, same situation as me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so ordinary. This is a story. Because I only really think things are a story if I feel like, it's something that we all connect to. So that turned out to be, I do write about my first French tenant who
Yes.
I learned
Mhm.
so much from, including learning that ennui is just another word for you're a bummer to be around. So I lost a little bit of my like Francophile nature in that. But, after that first tenant, it's been a fantastic way to live in this, I hate to say this word, but chapter of my life. It's brought so
Right.
much more love into my house and energy, and it returned that thing that I loved when my child was there, this sort of hustle and bustle of life. And I've totally recreated my life in a different way. And one of the stories is about, well, it was all an accident when I ended up opening my home to two young people experiencing homelessness.
That
When,
was an incredible twist from the French guy. And I thought, what
yeah,
is she doing? What is
well,
she doing having a 27-year-old Frenchman in her house?
right.
And then it's like, wait, this also seems like a dramatic twist, a young couple. Right.
Well, the thing is, if you're open to opportunities, things can happen in your
Right.
life. Certain things. I mean, this book is about certain losses and then other unexpected gains, And so what happened was I was renting the room out, the guest room, and I had a series of writers, and it was really fun after the French tenant turned my house into a weed dispensary. And then I lost a tenant, and I heard on NPR, never listen to NPR because things will change in your life in ways you can't expect. Of course, I'm kidding. I'm a former NPR commentator. I love NPR, but I'm listening to NPR and I hear about this program where you can host unhoused youth. And I swear, Lian, I thought it meant foreign exchange students.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, great.
I had
Cultural exchange. Fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize was it was a program. It's a really innovative, rapid rehousing program. It's happening in a lot of states across the United States, and it's based on this old tradition of, opening your home to someone in the community. Usually, in the past, it might have been someone through maybe your religious organization or someone
Okay,
who had
right.
the same cultural background. But and it's in fact it's really timely idea about opening your home to the unhoused youth in your community. And I was matched with a young couple, and the thing was I was going to receive a small stipend. No one's getting rich for doing this, but I decided, I had this empty bedroom, and when I started to investigate this and understand what was happening in Los Angeles and across the country, and to understand that these young people could have been my child,
Right.
but for not having a wide enough social network and the accident of birth, they were born to one family and not my family, they became unhoused. And taking them in and housing them while they worked with social services to get their lives stable. They're both housed now. They're both off in their lives. And, it was a profoundly hilarious experience and also, transformational for me and for them. And that's really, I feel like the tone that, the book takes it. I honestly, I didn't know what was going to happen in my life. And then all these opportunities came. One of the stories in the book is about deciding how I was going to embrace the mantle of family elder, because it's terrifying when you reach that age, right? Where you realize
we're the old generation.
Yes.
When we lost all of our upper generation, all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're the old people now. Oh my gosh, we have to organize. People are now
Right.
worried about us traveling to the events.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's a story about becoming a family elder. There's,
Yeah.
the stories about, as we know, as everyone knows, young people now are boomeranging back home at even greater rates during the pandemic. And I write about boomeranging and when your kid comes home. And I say kid because my child is a non-binary person now. And so that is one thing I write about, my learning process of parenting a young person who is non-binary. And
I found those so moving, Annabelle, and helpful. I mean, sort of prescient, because we're having a lot of very heated conversations right now about that and gender roles, and there's a lot in the news about that. But yours was just sort of a personal, helpful story. I thought those were very moving essays about Ezra. Thank you for writing those, and thank them for allowing you to write those.
Yeah, I mean that required some negotiation.
I bet. Yeah, what'd they get for that?
Hilariously, what they get is I hire them to do some of my social media during this book release. my 23-year-old child is me on Instagram, which is kind of hilarious. And they're like, I love being you, Mom. Mom, what do you think we should say to this? It's just kind of, or they just go and respond. I just thought, you do it, honey. You know how to do these things. So, but there's one thing, that I wrestle with, and one of the things I try to do in humanizing this experience and giving this particular experience of learning how to parent a child who's non-binary and who also is in recovery from addiction.
Right.
I felt like, Lian, that this was a really underserved um, area of for readers, in nonfiction, because it does require a lot of negotiating with your child. But
Right.
the one thing that does bump me up, and I write about my missteps, and I mean, this is not a preachy. These aren't preachy essays.
No,
But
they're fun and they're funny too, which is also missing in a lot of the dialogue.
oh,
These are real human beings and real relationships, and that
right,
doesn't change no matter what pronouns are going by or what name
right.
they're going by. The ups and downs are still there. Yeah.
It is a little bit vexing that there is no word for son or daughter if you're a non-binary person. So every time I say it, I'm like, it's hard. 23 years old. It's hard to say, kid or child. So I end up saying things like, the human being who sprung from inside my womb, whose cell phone bill I'm still paying. It's a mouthful, sure. It doesn't just roll off the tongue, but it's the best we can do. One of the things that I think we have in common, though, and because your Sweeney Sisters is out in paperback this week, and I just want to talk about that for a minute, because this idea of there's one of the chapters in my book starts with the words something like, I don't want to quote myself, but there's a time in your life when the
Oh, I
story.
have the quote.
Oh,
Oh,
you.
I have the. I'm going to quote you because this line literally blew me away. It's from the chapter called "Spirited Away," and it says, "There are times in our lives when the stories we tell ourselves about who we are no longer match the lives we are actually living."
Well, I feel like that's a good description of the Sweeney Sisters, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, that was a book I wrote about sisterhood, but about how your roles in the family really change. First, I was thinking when both your parents are gone, when your adult
Yeah.
siblings
Yeah.
trying to navigate that next step of your life, like without your parents holding it all together and being a primary focus. Oh my gosh, now what happens? And then in the Sweeney Sisters, there's all of a sudden this secret sibling that shows up, and that makes lives go up and down, and the oldest daughter is no longer the oldest anymore, and what does the middle child do, and who's coming to Thanksgiving? Those are
Right.
things you have to figure out.
What I love about that book is, I mean, first of all, the way that you write about women's lives and these distinct different women's and the women and the roles they take on in the family, and this adjustment to the secret sibling. I was rooting for all of them.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. And what's so funny about that is that you in a way it would be so easy to not be rooting for some of them, because the whole family mythology, and I love the way that you in this one novel, you both construct a family mythology and then you deconstruct it, because the past isn't what you thought it was. And it's so beautiful that you do that. And then that's how we really understand and I think that's what builds empathy for these characters. And then when the new sibling comes in, it would be easy to hate her, but you
Hate her,
can't
right.
hate her,
Right.
because when you start to, the way you humanize her life and the rethinking of her past that she has to do with the new knowledge she has, I love that. And God, I hope I did that as well in my book, because I think that's so much of an important point, that when you're doing that because there's this inciting incident, which is the secret sisters revealed. In my book, the inciting incident is all of the constructs of identity, wife, daily motherhood, daughter had fallen away. And so then you have to examine, well, were they all true to begin with? And who am I as I move forward? And
Don't you think you have a little bit more sympathy for people now at your age, at our age? I mean, I wonder, like, I was 50 something writing about 30 something. So I do think I may imbued them with a little bit more understanding. At 30, I might have had my hair on fire if, we had another sibling show up.
Right,
But
right. I mean, that is look, that's what they say, the beauty of ages is wisdom. And for me, I don't, that's such a a cliche in a certain sense, but I think it's true. But I think that for a writer, the real gift of age is detachment. With detachment,
there you go.
I can look at these events. I mean, first of all, I can't write about things because this is nonfiction that I'm writing about, at least. I can't write without detachment so that I can understand what it is that I want to that I'm telling the story for. I mean, I love a great anecdote, and there's a lot of funny stories in this
So many
book.
funny. I mean,
I remember I just said that,
yeah,
but
I did a lot of laughing, But
well,
there's also, like, you slip in a lot of actual facts and research. Like, I can see that these essays are constructed on a much wider platform than just I have a funny story to tell. And these are
yeah.
there's some facts involved.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, and when I say, oh, there's some funny stories in there, I mean, because what happens is, as I was thinking about this book and this theme, because I'm writing to 2 points all the time as a nonfiction writer and essayist, I'm writing to themes that I wanted to cover of issues that come up at this point in your life. And then I'm writing to these stories that took place. So these anecdotes, and then an anecdote is only a story if it holds a greater meaning, if it tells us something greater about life, So, I'll have a story like when my child had finished or at least that moment of rehab, and wanted to go back to college. And then there is no exact measure of, are you on a road to recovery that you're ready to go back to college. There's no benchmark that you just check off and say, okay, checked all the boxes. So what did I do? The best thing I could come up with was I signed us up for an escape room. But it was because of research I had done. I read that research that these escape rooms were now becoming like the new Briggs Myers personality testing, and it was like a way to measure your skills and adaptation to a stressful situation. I mean, there was thought behind it, but what it ends up being is this nutty situation where I've taken my child to a zombie apocalypse escape room, and if they can make it out,
to judge his sobriety.
yeah, I mean, it's so there's a mix of that. And then I when I was in college, I studied anthropology as well as sort of as part of the performing arts training I was doing. Theater, the avant-garde theater world was very influenced by ritual and performance, and so work of various anthropologists was drawn upon, and that really stuck with me. So in all my books, I'm sure some people are like, well, where does this come from? But I write about bonobo monkey culture, or in this book I write about the rites of passage in the animal kingdom, and how the rites of passage surrounding adolescence and humans, we should really take a page from the animal kingdom. And so I always like to and maybe it's my NPR background too.
Yeah, but that's the law, right? It's the law that facts have to be involved.
Yes.
Facts have to be involved.
Sure.
There's also a theme. If people have questions, go ahead and start typing them in the chat. I'll pull some of those in a bit. But there's also a theme of just straight up ageism in your book. Like, as a reader, I'm terrified for you, knowing that, like, our opportunities are starting to be limited. Like, we work in Los Angeles, where at our age, like there are many men now, 2 generations of people below us, like getting all the work and things like that. Is
Well,
that, how do you think about your age?
well, it's funny because when I started acting as a young actress, one of my teachers said something, great to me. She said, "Nobody needs you to become an actress. No one needs you to do. No one is telling you you have to do this. The only people that ever get told they must do it are like Brad Pitt because he's such a hunk. Like this, like one person out there."
Thank God someone told him
Yes.
that.
But you know what? No one, this is a choice you're making. And then, when I would go to her and I would complain about something, because I always had things to, that it's a crazy career choice, and I always like to dissuade people from it, which doesn't do any good if that's what your calling is. But the thing is, she would say, the conversation we're having about show business, plumbers are having the same conversation. I think for the most part,
Good point.
every business has its moments where you're okay. Your plumbing business has gotten great reviews on Yelp. You're doing great. Maybe you get a terrible spate of reviews and then your business falls off. I mean, I think every business has its limitations, and ours has its particularities, but I don't know that it's that different. Maybe I think that
You're right.
what we've seen also, I mean, what I'm really writing to is less, of course, a career in the arts and ageism in the arts per se, as the way that, these are stories about living in this time. But we know with the wage gap in America, so your very top percent, so your movie stars, let's say, and then the difference between everybody else is the salaries are just so different. And that's happening in every industry, and people age out of every industry.
Right. You're right.
And I mean, so there's, ageism is a subject that has all these different layers. And I always try to write thinking about how do I make peace with the age I actually am? And then what does the world make of me? And those are two really different subjects. So when people talk about ageism,
Right.
I always think it's important to know that we have different relationships to it, because one thing that I write to is, even just as women, the messages that we get about how we're supposed to age can influence us and they're internalized. One of the chapters I have is about, how women are marketed to, as, there's the brow, the bag, the bra, the bathcation that's going to change your life, and it's hard not to.
That's a very insightful essay on sort of, I like the wellness industrial
Yes.
complex. Yeah.
The wellness industrial complex. And I think even if we think we resist it, because I'm always thinking I resist retail therapy, we internalize these messages about how we should look. And of course, I am someone who has been thinking deeply about this, and perhaps it's also because I was an actress,
Right.
that I really do. I try to make peace with the age I am. The world is a different story, and how we negotiate the world. And this book really is written from the place of midlife for most Americans, and everyone who's come through the pandemic, unless you're in the top 1%, there's people are, laying awake at night wondering, people worked all their lives,
Right.
how will it hold? Will all the planning I've done hold? And that's.
We have a question. I just want to ask you this first. I
Uh-huh.
have a question here. Is it more of a challenge to find stories in the age of the pandemic?
Is it more, gosh, I think no. I mean, we're still alive, and the thwarting of life because all of the appliances in your home have expired. I mean, it's I think there was someone who the other day I read something that said, my my washing machine just got tired and gave out because they used it. We just have used our houses. My
Right.
house is like needs like a spa vacation, you know.
I said last week on the podcast, I wanted to burn everything in my house when this is over. I did all the furniture. I just want to start again. I just feel like we've used every inch of this house,
Yeah.
every inch.
I mean,
So,
I'm not a journalist, a travel journalist. Yes, I think if I was, that would be a little bit challenging. I would be writing about inner travels, but you know, most of the writing I'm doing right now, and I have written that I wrote a piece during the pandemic in Los Angeles Magazine about attending the first Jewish online matzo ball, which is this annual
wow.
dating thing that happens in person every year in cities all over America with Jewish
It's
groups.
just so funny. The matzo
And
ball.
the matzah ball on Christmas Eve, and it was online this year. And you can pull up that article I wrote about it in Los Angeles Magazine and try to decide whether it was a sinker or a floater. And if you've ever had matzah ball soup, you know what I'm talking about when it's a sinker or a floater. So there's always stories if we're awake, you know.
In the fall, you and I were both on the panel. You were the keynote speaker and I was a panelist at the Irma Bombeck Humor Writers
Yes.
weekend. It was fun. We were supposed to do it in person and we were really looking forward to
Yes.
spending the weekend in Dayton, Ohio. And then it got pushed to online, but you were the keynote. And what I recall from your like Friday night address is that you had to hold people's attention for 40 minutes, like just speaking into a Zoom camera with no audience, nothing. I just thought you did an extraordinary job. You were funny and smart. I laughed, I cried. It was like vintage Gurwitch. And then 2 months later, I read an op-ed piece in the New York Times that you were diagnosed during the pandemic with stage 4 metastatic lung cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Annabelle, my first thought weirdly was like, how did she do that thing at Irma? Like, how did you even get through that?
You know,
This incredible diagnosis. How did you do that? How did you do it?
well, that was a really tough moment. I mean, I'm not gonna, mince words about that, but you know, um, of course, when something like that happens, that's really shakes your confidence in yourself in some way. You know, there's a sense that something is being told to you. Since I was asymptomatic, something is being told to me about myself that I don't know. So, while I was editing this book was when I was getting this diagnosis, and it was actually really tough. That was one of the hardest things. Was I realized I lost my confidence as a writer for a moment because I thought, well, if I don't know that I have this cancer, I've been living like a person who's healthy, but this thing was told to me, how can I trust my ability to, my competency was in question for myself. That it had a really big effect on me psychologically. And the thing that I realized, because everyone has to make their own choices, and obviously it also depends on how you are feeling at that moment. But for me, I had this realization that I didn't want to be a cancer warrior. I didn't want to be a cancer, thriver. I was like, oh my God, I'm in a competitive business enough myself. But what I did want to be, I wanted to be an ordinary version of myself. I didn't want to run a marathon. I wanted to be the person who had cancer and didn't run a marathon, but just continued with their life. And that's been my goal. And I feel like that's been the best choice that I've made for myself, has been to try to, as much as possible, stick to the commitments I've had.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to do that by virtue of what I do for a living, and and just my energy level, which is luckily good. But it's definitely a little compromise from that. But I just have decided, I'm going to try to keep all those things that I'm doing, and this idea of, is humor still my solace? Do I still,
Right.
I it's a funny thing is I've found that the humor enduring cancer is just as, it comes, there's always people say like tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Right.
The tragedy plus time has been compressed, and I feel like tragedy comedy come together very quickly during COVID for a lot of people. And I there's a saying in, comedy world, too soon, and everyone knows that means, have you made a joke too soon? And I feel like it can't come soon enough. It's just right there, and it is the thing that keeps me going. It's the thing that I have.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Is the work is sort of how just having a voice about whatever you want to have a voice about, has that helped you, or has that
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's funny. I think, people have said, I think I heard this, you become more yourself as you get older. Now, if we really think about that, that's terrifying.
right?
I also feel like that means you become more yourself, like you're expanding the
I
way.
just feel like more hairs in weird places when you say that. Like, oh God, no, I don't want any more of that.
That's not a good thing. Forget that. But I do think that, I mean, that's one thing this book is about, is at certain points, though, we do have to say, we make choices. Like, for instance, I mean, my marriage ended, a marriage of 20 some years. At a certain point, 20 some years, you could go either way, really.
Right, you could, right?
I mean, it's sort of like and look, 20 years, great run. I mean, just 20 years in Los Angeles is actually like 50 years anywhere else. It's kind of like they give you, well, they don't give you a gold pin, but they should,
They should.
really. Oh, gold, something. But, the thing is, there's choices that you have to make about how you're going to go on. And, one of the things that, as, at the very end of this book that I come to is this confronting one of my biggest sort of fears, which was becoming Blanche Dubois.
Right.
I really took Tennessee Williams to heart. Perhaps it was because I was an actress and also born in the South. But I think for people of a certain age, we read that or we saw the play a few times, and getting older, Blanche is a spinster. She's down on her luck, and she's alone facing the future, and she has to have paper lanterns covering the lights. And the worst thing of all, this was the message I got from that play, was she would be dependent on the kindness of strangers. I was like, and then, that happened during COVID.
Right.
All of a sudden, this realization that our lives are so interconnected. The person who may save your life would be a stranger. That
Right.
person who wore the mask near you, that person who might save your life if you got sick. And
Gave you their one roll of toilet paper, split their toilet paper hoard with you.
exactly, the person who didn't wrestle you to the ground when you over the last roll of toilet paper. And I feel like that was and so that there is a story that takes us into the pandemic in the book, and I feel like I faced some of these really big fears, and I've walked through it. It is possible I might be Blanche Dubois, but the funny thing is, I didn't put this, Lian, in the book, but I did write up a bunch of alternate endings to Tennessee Williams' play.
And that's funny. That's save it for your podcast. Oh gosh, that's 2 episodes.
It's just I didn't end up including it. But I did write these endings, and anyone who's listening and watching who knows the play well will know what I'm talking about. But it was like a series of letters that Blanche wrote to Stella from the asylum, which were like, guess what? That doctor who I thought was a gentleman caller we fell in love, or like, or like, guess what? I have discovered that I'm a talented painter. Ditch that husband of yours and join me. I'm gonna get out of here and go have a life now, and we should just go two sisters on the road. Just like, I just thought of all these other ways it could have gone.
Right.
And in a way, I mean, I didn't end up writing that because it just was taking up a lot of space. I'm like, oh my God, is this a rethinking of Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire, or is this a memoir? But that's really what I'm doing for myself, is setting up in the beginning of this book this jeopardy of the loss of all these things. And then slowly, I think the message is, oh, but then there's this unexpected gift, and this unexpected gift. And
We do have a question, though, that I think you've just led beautifully into. So thank you. So Liz asks, many feel shame about admitting to downward mobility. So thanks for putting it out there. Do you worry about being attached to the idea, like admitting your real age in Hollywood?
Yes, yeah, perhaps it's all misguided. We shall see how this works out. But
Is there a brand ambassadorship for downward mobility?
I love that. As I told you, Lian, the big brand ambassador now for downward mobility.
Is it the 99-cent store? Who do you get? Who pays your bills now? I don't know.
Well, let me tell you something. The pay is not good, but people seem to really appreciate the work I'm doing. So there's a lot of call for this ambassadorship. I have had a very deep commitment to writing about this because I saw my mother really separated by the financial struggles of our family when I was growing up. And I got, and I got a taste of that. I spent my childhood dodging creditors for my parents. And my parents weren't home from 1972 to 1980 when I answered the phone. They were never home.
They're out of the country. They're just out of the country.
Yes. And, it was just, they carried so much shame. And I think that all of our society and perhaps women in particular feel this shame.
Yeah.
And I really want to ask the question, who are we without that? Just like I'm asking the question, who are we if we admit our real age? Who are we if we don't buy to needing the status handbag? Who are we? And I think, I'm always suspicious of the word happiness, but we're definitely whatever is the opposite of shameful. We're less shameful. I think it's freeing, and I wanted to do that for other people and that has been the response from this book.
I'm glad to hear that. No, I'm glad to hear that because
Yeah.
I mean, people lose wealth for all kinds of reasons. They end up downwardly for all kinds of reasons, and that kind of shame can consume you.
Yeah.
Right. Someone wants to know about the couple that you gave shelter to there. Where is the young homeless couple now? What are they doing now? Do you know?
Well, they are young, and so it's not going to be a total surprise to hear they have broken up. But they are each pursuing their paths, and I'm in touch with them. And actually, I think we're going to have lunch tomorrow. We have some kind of date coming up. One of the reasons why I write about them, and I was very privileged to have them allow me to write their stories, and they actually really wanted to write their stories. I mean, they wanted me to
again, it's a beautiful chapter in the book. It's well done. It's very moving. It's well done. It's well done.
Well, thank you. One of the most profoundly moving moments in my own life happened in my kitchen when there was, and I write about this in the book, someone had died, someone had overdosed that they knew. And it turned out that my child also had known this person. And then I found out that rapper named Sketchy, went by the name of Sketchy, was actually the son of a couple that I knew. And, just the realization of how closely interconnected we were. And we were all grieving together. And um, Jesse, who I write about in the book, went to the guest bedroom where they were staying, and he brought out a picture of his parents. And he wanted to show me a picture of his parents. And, you know, by this moment, I had realized how much in common I had with these young people. They had families who loved them and who they loved. And I hadn't imagined that someone who was unhoused had parents. I mean, it sounds
Right.
crazy to me now. And I had couch surfed a lot and stayed with people who I barely knew when I first moved to LA. But I never felt the need to pull out a picture of my parents to establish for my hosts that I was a person who came from somewhere,
Yeah.
and that, was a privilege for me to get to learn so much from them. I got as much from them as they gained from the time they spent at my house. And I like to say it's another iteration of motherhood. And so when my child left the house, I got to, now I'm not their mom because they have moms, but I am a mom. I'm
Right.
a local mom who cares about all the kids who passed in and out of the house that were friends of my kid, and the realization that we as a country don't have a safety net, and young people who are just like all the other kids who pass through my house, should have shelter too, and that we can do something about it as ordinary citizens. It was really an experience that I felt very strongly about sharing, and that's the story that I'm writing for HBO.
Oh, okay. I wondered. That was new information that Lauren had in the intro. Oh, okay. All right. Good. That's great. Huh.
Yeah, it just changed the way and my understanding of who is falling in and out of homelessness,
Right.
and I'm going to answer a question just by the way, not to change the subject quickly, but did I enjoy the matzah of freedom on Passover? You can't. Uh, I'm still enjoying the matzah of freedom because I bought a little too much matzah of freedom, which is really the sign of freedom when you have a surfeit of matzah. I have a lot of matzah left over because, just not having a lot of people over for a Seder, I did not plan correctly. So I have like 7 box. I'll be eating
Lot,
that matzah of
lot,
freedom. Yeah.
yeah. In Christians, we have too much ham. It's the same thing. It's just, I
That,
didn't need a giant
that's
ham.
the very same thing. And by the way, for people who read my writing will know that I identify as a one of, and there are Judaism, like other things, is like a spectrum, and I'm one of those secular atheist Jews who observes every holiday. And I also, I any chance for a meal, I love rituals, and Passover does have a great and important um, meaning. And as my friend Rabbi Mel Gottlieb, who is watching this,
Oh, Mel. Okay. Mel's on.
has
Loves you. He loves you,
and I
Annabelle.
love him. He inspired me to think about this time of the year with the Seder, but it's a good thing to think about all year long of what is it that is enslaving you or keeping you, holding you back, and what is your personal road to freedom. And I love that interpretation of the Passover story. And it's, I think during this moment, in this pivotal moment in our country, we need two, well, we need a lot of things, but amongst them, we need more empathy and laughter. Empathy and laughter. It's like that's got to be on the menu always, right?
Well, I want to wrap at that because I think that's the perfect way to end it. It is literally what this wonderful book is filled with. You're leaving when? Adventures in Downward Mobility. Annabelle Gurwitch, thank you. I want to remind people it's in the chat, but you're actually signing copies in person there on Saturday. There is a phone number. I see. I know it is a lot of familiar names from Satellite Sisters, so I know there's a lot of people listening who are not from Southern Cal, but if you want a signed copy, I think you can call the store and you can get it signed by Annabelle. And Annabelle, you are going to be on Satellite Sisters in a couple weeks. So I'm excited because there's a whole topic areas we have not covered yet. So don't worry, there's more to say. There's more to say.
I want to thank Creating Conversations. I love the store, and I really want to see everyone supported and get my book there. And I also just want to say, do yourself a favor and get Sweeney Sisters. I devoured the book in one night. It was so much fun to enter that world, and we didn't have a chance to talk about how it's a literary novel, it's a family novel. It's just, it's like the best dessert and not fattening. I just loved it so much, and just Lian, it's so smart and sly and funny and all the good things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, this has really been fun. Yes, a big thanks to the team at Creating Conversations. They're just a wonderful resource here in Southern California in Redondo Beach. But I'm glad that we have other people on the line. So, be in touch with them and take a look at their event calendar. All right, Annabelle, you probably have 8 more events within the next 72 hours.
Just come to my website, and people who are writing and saying different things, find me on the socials. We'll continue the conversation.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Of course, thank you both so much. This was really eye-opening and engaging, and I took a lot from this. I'm sure many of the other viewers did as well.